Racist officer wrongfully arrests black lawyer career shattered. $8.5 million lawsuit step out of the car. Hands where I can see them. I'm not in a car. I'm walking to my office. You match a suspect description. Put your hands on the hood. Officer, I'm an attorney. I work in that building. This is my briefcase. Drop the bag and turn around. Now I haven't done anything. My name is Cameron Mitchell. I'm a partner at Mitchell and Associates. That's my office right there. I don't care if you're the governor. You're being detained for questioning. I'm showing you my credentials. Bar card, driver's license, business card. You can verify everything. Those could be fake. Hands behind your back. You're arresting me for walking to work. You're under arrest for failure to comply and suspicious activity. Officer Cameron Mitchell had been with the Chicago Police Department for 7 years when he walked up to a man who would destroy his career and cost the city $8.5 million. He was 31 years old, experienced enough to recognize his mistakes, but apparently convinced his instincts were never wrong. One Monday morning on South LaSalle Street in the heart of Chicago's financial district, he saw a well-dressed black man carrying a leather briefcase and decided without a radio call, without a crime, without any legitimate reason that this man needed to be stopped. That man was Cameron Mitchell, no relation, a 42-year-old civil rights attorney who had spent 15 years building a reputation for holding law enforcement accountable. What Officer Mitchell did next, ignoring professional credentials, dismissing witness testimony from other attorneys, and arresting Mitchell in front of the federal courthouse where he had argued cases dozens of times, would become proof of how racial profiling destroys careers and costs cities millions. The arrest would be filmed by security cameras and bystander phones. The lawsuit would be devastating. And the question that would haunt the Chicago Police Department was simple. How did an officer with 11 documented complaints remain on patrol long enough to arrest a prominent civil rights attorney on a public sidewalk in broad daylight? A black man in his early 40s wearing a navy suit and carrying a Toomey briefcase, Cameron Mitchell was walking north on South LaSalle Street at 8:47 on a Monday morning in September. He had just parked in the lot behind his office building. His coffee was in his left hand. His phone was in his right. He had a deposition scheduled for 9:30. No warrant, no crime, no violation, just a lawyer walking to work. But Officer Mitchell saw him through assumptions so distorted that he could not process a black man in professional attire as anything other than someone who required police intervention. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. South LaSalle Street cuts through the heart of Chicago's financial and legal district. Stretch between Jackson Boulevard and Adams Street is lined with office towers, law firms, investment banks, and corporate headquarters. The buildings are glass and steel, rising 40 and 50 stories into the Chicago sky. The sidewalks during morning rush hour are packed with professionals. Attorneys carrying trial bags, bankers in tailored suits, paralegals juggling coffee and file boxes, messengers delivering documents to courtrooms. It was 8:47 on a Monday morning in September. The temperature was in the low 60s, that crisp early fall weather that makes Chicago mornings feel clean and energizing. The sun was bright, reflecting off the glass towers and creating sharp shadows on the sidewalk. Traffic on LaSalle was heavy with cars and taxis heading north toward the loop. The CTA trains rumbled underneath the street every few minutes, causing a subtle vibration you could feel through your shoes. The area is expensive real estate. Office space rents for $60 per square foot. The restaurant served $25 salads to attorneys who bill $500 per hour. The coffee shops charge $6 for lattes. This is a professional district, a place where people wear suits and talk about cases and deals and markets. The Dirksen Federal Building sits at the corner of South Dearborn Street, 2 blocks east. The Daily Center is 3 blocks north. The Richard J. Daley Plaza hosts lunch crowds on nice days. This is the center of Chicago's legal world, where federal cases are argued, where major civil litigation happens, where careers are made or broken in courtrooms and conference rooms. Cameron Mitchell had walked this route hundreds of times in his 15-year career. His office was on the 18th floor of the building at 33 South LaSalle, a location he had chosen specifically because it was 3 blocks from the federal courthouse and 4 blocks from the state courthouse. He knew this neighborhood. He knew the judges, the clerks, the other attorneys who worked in the surrounding buildings. This was his professional home. That Monday morning, Mitchell had parked in his usual spot in the garage behind his building. He had stopped at the Starbucks on the corner to grab his regular order, a grand dark roast, black, no sugar. He was wearing a navy Tom Ford suit, a white dress shirt, a burgundy silk tie, and black Ferragamo Oxfords. His briefcase contained files for the deposition he would be conducting in 2 hours. He looked exactly like what he was, a successful attorney starting his work week. He had no idea that a Chicago police officer was about to turn his Monday morning into a national news story about racial profiling and civil rights. Cameron James Mitchell had earned every credential he carried. Born on the south side of Chicago in the Bronzeville neighborhood, he had grown up watching his community deal with both poverty and aggressive policing. His father had worked for the Chicago Transit Authority as a bus driver for 30 years. His mother had been a nurse at Mercy Hospital. They had raised Cameron and his younger brother in a modest home on East 47th Street, emphasizing education as the path to a better life. Mitchell had excelled academically. He graduated valedictorian from Kenwood Academy High School in 1999. He had been accepted to Northwestern University on a full academic scholarship, where he studied political science and African American studies. He graduated magna cum laude in 2003 with a 3.89 grade point average and a senior thesis on the intersection of criminal justice policy and racial inequality that won the university's Social Science Research Award. He had been accepted to the University of Michigan Law School, 3 years studying constitutional law, civil procedure, and federal litigation. He had been on the Michigan Law Review. He had spent 2 summers working at the ACLU of Illinois. He had graduated in 2006 in the top 10% of his class. After graduation, Mitchell had clerked for 2 years for Judge Robert Gettleman on the United States District Court for the Northern District of Illinois. Judge Gettleman was known for his careful analysis of civil rights cases, and Mitchell had helped research and draft opinions on Fourth Amendment violations, qualified immunity standards, and Section 1983 claims. In 2008, Cameron Mitchell had started his own firm, Mitchell & Associates. The practice specialized in police misconduct litigation, wrongful arrest claims, excessive force cases, and civil rights violations. For 15 years, he had represented clients who had been harmed by law enforcement officers who abused their authority. He had won verdicts and settlements totaling over $45 million. He had argued before the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals. He had testified before the Chicago City Council on police accountability measures. He had been featured in Chicago Magazine as one of the city's top civil rights attorneys. He had trained other lawyers on federal civil rights litigation at seminars hosted by the Chicago Bar Association. At 42 years old, Cameron Mitchell was exactly the kind of attorney police departments feared. Experienced, successful, connected, and completely committed to holding officers accountable when they violated constitutional rights. That Monday morning, Mitchell had just finished preparing for a deposition in Robinson v. City of Chicago, a case involving an unlawful search during a traffic stop. His client, Marcus Robinson, had been pulled over in Lincoln Park for allegedly rolling through a stop sign. The officer had searched the vehicle without consent or probable cause, found nothing illegal, and then issued tickets for multiple minor violations. Mitchell had filed suit alleging Fourth Amendment violations. The city had offered to settle for $175,000, but Mitchell had advised his client to proceed to trial because he believed they could win significantly more based on the officer's history of similar stops. Mitchell had arrived at his office parking garage at 8:40. He had grabbed his briefcase from the trunk, walked 2 blocks to get coffee, and was heading back to his building when Officer Terrence Mitchell, no relation and no idea who he was about to confront, saw him and made a decision that would end a law enforcement career. Officer Terrence Mitchell had been with the Chicago Police Department for 7 years. In that time, he had accumulated a disciplinary record that should have resulted in his removal from street patrol years before he encountered Cameron Mitchell. 11 formal complaints. 11. 9 of them involved allegations of racial profiling, unlawful detention, or discriminatory conduct against Black and Hispanic residents. 3 had been sustained, resulting in suspensions without pay and mandatory retraining. The other 8 had been closed as not sustained or unfounded despite witness statements and documentation that raised serious questions. The pattern was clear and documented. Officer Mitchell did not randomly encounter difficult situations. He systematically targeted people of color in professional settings where he believed they did not belong. In 2017, Officer Mitchell had stopped a Black doctor leaving Northwestern Memorial Hospital after a night shift. He had demanded identification and questioned why the doctor was in the area at 3 a.m. The doctor was wearing scrubs with his hospital ID badge visible. Officer Mitchell had run a warrant check that came back clear, then warned the doctor about suspicious behavior. The doctor filed a complaint. The department ruled it unfounded. In 2018, Officer Mitchell had detained a Hispanic attorney in the parking garage of the Daily Center. The attorney was loading trial materials into his car after a court hearing. Officer Mitchell claimed the attorney matched a theft suspect description, despite the fact that the attorney was in a suit and had courthouse security credentials. The detention lasted 25 minutes. The attorney filed a complaint. The department ruled it not sustained. In 2019, Officer Mitchell had arrested a black real estate agent for trespassing at a property in Lincoln Park. The agent was showing the property to clients and had a key and listing agreement from the owner. Officer Mitchell refused to verify the documentation with the real estate office and arrested the agent in front of his clients. The charges were dropped within 48 hours. The agent filed a complaint. The department sustained it and suspended Officer Mitchell for 5 days without pay. In 2020, Officer Mitchell had stopped a black professor from the University of Chicago who was jogging in Hyde Park. He claimed the professor matched a robbery suspect description, despite the fact that the professor was wearing running gear and headphones. The professor showed identification. Officer Mitchell held him for 15 minutes while running checks. The professor filed a complaint. The department ruled it not sustained. In 2021, Officer Mitchell had detained a black businesswoman leaving a meeting at a downtown office building. He claimed she looked nervous and was acting suspiciously. She was carrying a laptop bag and wearing business attire. She worked in the building. Officer Mitchell questioned her for 10 minutes before allowing her to leave. She filed a complaint. The department ruled it unfounded. In early 2022, Officer Mitchell had arrested a Hispanic delivery driver for loitering outside a restaurant in River North. The driver was waiting to pick up an order for a catering delivery. He had documentation from the catering company. Officer Mitchell claimed the driver became belligerent, which the driver denied and which surveillance footage did not support. The charges were dropped. The driver filed a complaint. The department sustained it and suspended Officer Mitchell for 10 days without pay with mandatory bias training. Every complaint told the same story. Officer Mitchell saw people of color in professional or affluent settings and decided they were suspicious. He used his authority to stop, question, detain, or arrest them based on nothing more than his biased assumptions about who belonged in those spaces. The Chicago Police Department had 11 documented complaints spanning 7 years. They had sustained 3 of them. They had evidence of a pattern. They had multiple opportunities to remove Officer Mitchell from patrol. They left him on the street. Do you think officers should be permanently removed from patrol after 3 sustained complaints for racial bias? Drop your answer below. Officer Mitchell was driving south on LaSalle Street when he saw Cameron Mitchell walking north on the sidewalk. Mitchell, the attorney, was checking his phone, coffee in hand, briefcase at his side, walking at a normal pace like hundreds of other professionals on that street at that hour. But Officer Mitchell did not see a professional. He saw a black man in an expensive suit carrying what looked like an expensive briefcase, and his biased mind told him something was wrong. Officer Mitchell pulled his patrol car to the curb and got out. He approached Cameron Mitchell from behind. Step out of the car. Hands where I can see them. Cameron Mitchell stopped and turned around, confused. He was not near a car. He was walking on the sidewalk. I'm not in a car. I'm walking to my office. Officer Mitchell stepped closer, his hand moving to his service weapon in a gesture designed to intimidate. You match a suspect description. Put your hands on the hood. Mitchell, the attorney, looked at the patrol car, then back at the officer. His voice remained calm and professional, the tone of someone trained to de-escalate tense situations. Officer, I'm an attorney. I work in that building right there. This is my briefcase. I'm walking to my office. He gestured toward the office tower half a block away. Drop the bag and turn around. Now, this is where assumptions become accusations. When an officer has decided you are a criminal based solely on your appearance, no explanation will change that conclusion. Evidence becomes irrelevant. Context disappears. Only the bias remains. Cameron Mitchell set his coffee on the ground slowly. He did not drop his briefcase because it contained a laptop and sensitive client files. He set it down carefully. Other pedestrians were starting to notice the confrontation. Several slowed their walking pace. 2 people across the street pulled out phones. I haven't done anything wrong. My name is Cameron Mitchell. I'm a partner at Mitchell & Associates. That's my office building at 33 South LaSalle. I can show you identification. I don't care if you're the governor. You're being detained for questioning. Mitchell reached slowly into his jacket pocket and pulled out his wallet. He opened it to show his Illinois State Bar card, his driver's license, and his firm's business card. He held them out so the officer could see clearly. "I'm showing you my credentials. Bar card with my photo and bar number. Driver's license with my address. Business card with my firm name and office location. You can verify all of this information right now." Officer Mitchell barely glanced at the credentials. Those could be fake. Hands behind your back. Cameron Mitchell stared at the officer. He recognized what was happening because he had represented dozens of clients in identical situations. He knew that complying might be safer, but that resistance was not the issue here. The issue was that this officer had decided to arrest him regardless of evidence. "You're arresting me for walking to work. You're under arrest for failure to comply and suspicious activity." By this point, a crowd had gathered. A white attorney who worked 2 floors below Cameron Mitchell's office stepped forward. His name was David Chen, and he had collaborated with Mitchell on several cases. "Officer, that's Cameron Mitchell. He's a civil rights attorney. His office is in that building. I work with him. He's not a suspect. He's a lawyer walking to work." Officer Mitchell turned toward Chen, his voice sharp. "Sir, step back or you'll be charged with obstruction." Chen did not step back. "I'm telling you that you're making a serious mistake. Cameron Mitchell is a prominent attorney in this city. He specializes in police misconduct cases. If you arrest him without cause, you will face consequences." Officer Mitchell's face flushed. The warning should have registered. The presence of witnesses should have given him pause. The professional credentials should have prompted verification. Instead, his pride and his bias pushed him forward. "Turn around," Officer Mitchell said to Cameron Mitchell. "You're under arrest." Mitchell made a decision. He could continue asserting his rights, or he could comply and address this wrongful arrest through proper legal channels. He chose compliance because he understood that escalation could lead to violence. "I'm complying. I'm turning around. I'm not resisting in any way." He turned and placed his hands behind his back. Officer Mitchell grabbed his wrist and pulled it up higher than necessary, causing Mitchell to wince. The handcuffs clicked into place, tight enough to hurt. The second wrist was cuffed the same way. Officer Mitchell picked up the briefcase from the sidewalk and opened it without permission. Inside were legal files, a laptop, a yellow legal pad with case notes, and business cards that read Cameron Mitchell, Esquire, Partner, Mitchell and Associates, Civil Rights Litigation. Officer Mitchell stared at the business cards. The reality of his mistake was starting to penetrate, but admitting error would mean acknowledging that he had arrested a man for being black in professional attire. His pride would not allow that admission. "Anyone can print business cards," Officer Mitchell said. The crowd was larger now. At least a dozen people were watching. Multiple phones were recording. David Chen was on his phone, likely calling Mitchell's office. Another attorney in the crowd, a woman named Sarah Goldstein who had argued against Mitchell in court, spoke up. "Officer, I practice law in this city. That is Cameron Mitchell. He is a partner at a civil rights firm. He has argued cases in federal court. You are making a catastrophic mistake." Officer Mitchell ignored her. He walked Cameron Mitchell toward the patrol car, gripping his arm hard enough to leave marks. The crowd followed, phones raised, witnessing every moment. Mitchell kept his head up, his expression calm despite the humiliation, his mind already calculating the legal claims. False arrest, unlawful detention, Fourth Amendment violations, 14th Amendment equal protection violations, possibly monal liability against the city for failure to train. Officer Mitchell opened the back door of the patrol car and pushed Mitchell's head down, forcing him into the back seat harder than necessary. The door slammed shut. Through the window, Mitchell could see David Chen still on the phone, Sarah Goldstein recording video, a dozen other professionals watching in shock. Officer Mitchell got into the driver's seat and radioed dispatch. "This is Unit 429. I have a 1015 on South LaSalle, male, black subject, early 40s, arrested for failure to comply and suspicious activity, transporting to central booking." The dispatcher's voice came back. "Unit 429, what was the initial call?" "No call, proactive stop. Subject matched a description. What description, 429? There was a pause. Officer Mitchell had no description. There had been no crime. There was no suspect. We'll provide details at booking," he said. The transmission ended. In the back seat, Cameron Mitchell sat in handcuffs, watching his office building disappear from view. He had spent 15 years representing people who had been wrongfully arrested. Now he was experiencing it firsthand. And every second had been captured on camera by witnesses who knew exactly who he was. The videos uploaded to social media before Officer Mitchell reached the police station. Multiple angles from the sidewalk. Cameron Mitchell showing credentials. Officer Mitchell dismissing them as potentially fake. David Chen identifying Mitchell as an attorney. Sarah Goldstein confirming his identity. Mitchell being handcuffed. The briefcase being searched with business cards clearly visible. Mitchell being pushed into the patrol car. Within an hour, the videos had been shared thousands of times. Within 2 hours, Chicago news stations were calling the police department for comment. Within 3 hours, Mitchell's law partner had contacted the mayor's office, the police superintendent, and every civil rights organization in the city. By the time Officer Mitchell arrived at central booking with Cameron Mitchell in custody, his watch commander, Captain Linda Morrison, was waiting. Morrison had been with the Chicago Police Department for 23 years. She had been Officer Mitchell's supervisor for 18 months and had written multiple performance reviews noting concerns about his judgment and his complaint history. Morrison met Officer Mitchell as he was escorting Cameron Mitchell into the booking area. "Mitchell, who is this?" Officer Mitchell straightened, defensive. "Arrestee for failure to comply and suspicious activity. Stopped him on LaSalle Street." Morrison looked at Cameron Mitchell. Expensive suit, professional demeanor, calm despite being in handcuffs. "Name?" Cameron Mitchell spoke before the officer could answer. "I'm Cameron Mitchell. I'm a civil rights attorney with Mitchell and Associates. Officer Mitchell arrested me while I was walking to my office. I showed him my bar card, driver's license, and business cards. He claimed they could be fake. I've been unlawfully arrested." Morrison's expression changed instantly. She knew that name. Every supervisor in the Chicago Police Department knew that name. Cameron Mitchell had won major settlements against the city. He had testified in federal court about police misconduct patterns. He had been interviewed on local news about accountability. She turned to Officer Mitchell, her voice cold. "You arrested Cameron Mitchell." Officer Mitchell hesitated. "I didn't know who he was. He looked suspicious." Morrison held out her hand. "Give me the handcuff keys, right now." Officer Mitchell handed them over. Morrison unlocked the handcuffs. Cameron Mitchell rubbed his wrists where red marks showed where the metal had been too tight. "Mr. Mitchell, I apologize. This arrest was unjustified. You're free to go. We will be conducting an immediate internal investigation." Mitchell looked at her calmly. "Captain, I was arrested without probable cause while walking to my office. I identified myself. I showed credentials. Multiple witnesses confirmed my identity. An apology does not address the civil rights violation that just occurred. I will be filing formal complaints, and I will be filing a federal lawsuit." Morrison nodded. "You have every right to do that, sir. I understand." Mitchell walked out of the station and immediately called his office. Within 4 hours, Mitchell and Associates had issued a press statement. Within 24 hours, the video had been viewed over 3 million times. Within 48 hours, the story was covered by national news outlets. Should officers who arrest attorneys with verified credentials face immediate suspension pending investigation? Let me know your thoughts. The media response was immediate and intense. The videos showed everything. A black attorney arrested while walking to work. Professional credentials shown and dismissed. Multiple witnesses confirming his identity. Handcuffs applied unnecessarily tight. An arrest based entirely on the officer's biased assumption that a black man in an expensive suit must be suspicious. The headlines captured the outrage. Civil rights attorney arrested walking to his own office. Chicago cop arrests prominent lawyer, claims bar card could be fake. Attorney handcuffed on LaSalle Street after officer decides he looks suspicious. Cameron Mitchell arrested for walking while black in Chicago's financial district. The Chicago chapter of the NAACP issued a statement demanding Officer Mitchell's termination. The Illinois State Bar Association called for a comprehensive investigation. The Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights condemned the arrest. The mayor's office announced a review of police procedures for credential verification. Officer Terrence Mitchell was placed on administrative leave the same day. The internal investigation took 4 weeks. The findings were unambiguous. Officer Mitchell had no reasonable suspicion to stop Cameron Mitchell, no probable cause to arrest him, no legitimate basis for dismissing verified credentials and witness testimony. The arrest violated department policy, state law, and Cameron Mitchell's constitutional rights. Officer Mitchell was terminated 5 weeks after the arrest. The termination letter was comprehensive and damning. Officer Mitchell conducted an unlawful stop and arrest of a licensed attorney without reasonable suspicion or probable cause. He dismissed legitimate credentials verified by multiple witnesses. This incident represents the 12th complaint against Officer Mitchell, with 9 involving racial bias or discriminatory conduct. Despite 2 prior suspensions and mandatory training, Officer Mitchell has demonstrated a persistent pattern of targeting individuals of color in professional settings. His employment with the Chicago Police Department is terminated effective immediately. Officer Mitchell's name was entered into the National Decertification Index. At 31 years old, his law enforcement career was over. Captain Linda Morrison, who had supervised Officer Mitchell and documented concerns without removing him from patrol, faced disciplinary action. An internal review determined that she had failed to adequately address the pattern of complaints. She was demoted to lieutenant and reassigned to administrative duties. The federal lawsuit that Cameron Mitchell filed was extensive. He sued Officer Terrence Mitchell individually for false arrest, unlawful detention, violation of Fourth Amendment rights, violation of 14th Amendment equal protection rights, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. He sued the city of Chicago for failure to train, failure to supervise, negligent retention of an officer with a documented pattern of discriminatory conduct, and maintaining policies that allowed officers with multiple sustained bias complaints to remain on patrol. The city's attorneys reviewed the videos, the witness statements, Officer Mitchell's complaint history, and the internal investigation findings. Their conclusion was the same one they had reached in previous cases Cameron Mitchell had litigated: indefensible. The city settled 13 months after the arrest. The settlement was $8.5 million. Cameron Mitchell donated $1 million to the Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights and established a scholarship fund for students from the South Side pursuing legal education. Should police departments be required to publicly disclose the complete complaint histories of officers with 5 or more bias complaints? Comment below. Cameron Mitchell testified before the Chicago City Council 8 months after his arrest. The chamber was filled with community members, attorneys, civil rights advocates, and journalists. His testimony was direct and powerful. I have practiced civil rights law for 15 years. I have represented more than 200 clients who told me they were stopped without cause, arrested without probable cause, treated as criminals for existing in spaces where someone decided they did not belong. I believed them. I fought for them. I won justice for them. But until Officer Mitchell arrested me on South LaSalle Street, I did not fully understand the depth of humiliation that comes with being handcuffed on a public sidewalk while witnesses watch and record. He paused, looking directly at the council members. I was walking to my office after getting coffee. I was wearing a suit. I was carrying a briefcase with my firm's name on my business cards inside. I showed Officer Mitchell my bar card with my photograph and bar number. I showed him my driver's license. I had multiple witnesses, including other attorneys who practice in the city, confirming my identity. None of it mattered. Officer Mitchell had decided I was suspicious based on one factor. I'm a black man in professional attire in a location where his biased mind could not accept that I belonged. Another pause. This is not an isolated incident. Officer Mitchell had 11 prior complaints. 11. 9 involved allegations of racial bias. 3 were sustained. The department knew about his pattern. Supervisors documented concerns. He received training. He was suspended twice. And the department left him on patrol where he continued to target people of color until he arrested someone who had the knowledge and resources to fight back effectively. His voice remained calm but carried unmistakable authority. This is systemic racism in action. It is not always violent. It is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is an officer who cannot process the idea that a black professional belongs in a financial district, who sees credentials and assumes they must be counterfeit, who hears witness testimony and dismisses it because his bias is more powerful than evidence. The final statement. This does not just happen to attorneys who can afford federal litigation. This happens every day to black professionals, black students, black residents who do not have bar cards or witness testimony or video evidence. If this can happen to me with all my credentials and experience and professional standing, what happens to everyone else who lacks those protections? The room was completely silent when he finished. Should racial profiling complaints trigger automatic removal from patrol duties after the 3rd sustained finding? Drop your answer in the comments. This case was not about one officer arresting one attorney. This was about a system that allowed Terrence Mitchell to accumulate 11 complaints over 7 years without permanent removal from patrol. This was about supervisors who documented pattern concerns but failed to take definitive action. This was about a department that treated bias training as a procedural requirement rather than a genuine intervention. This was about a culture that protected officers who targeted people of color until those officers finally made a mistake so public and so well documented that ignoring it became impossible. 11 complaints in 7 years. That is not bad luck. That is not a series of misunderstandings. That is a pattern. A pattern that the Chicago Police Department had documented in internal files, sustained in 3 separate investigations, and completely failed to address until Officer Mitchell arrested a prominent civil rights attorney in front of multiple witnesses with cameras. The arrest of Cameron Mitchell was the predictable outcome of a system designed to shield officers from accountability. Officer Mitchell believed he could stop any person of color who appeared out of place according to his biased judgment. He believed he could dismiss credentials and ignore witnesses because the department had taught him through years of inadequate consequences that his actions would not result in termination. He was wrong, but only because this time he arrested someone with the legal expertise and professional network to pursue justice effectively. Cameron Mitchell's lawsuit cost Chicago $8.5 million. That is accountability. Terrence Mitchell's career is over. That is consequence. Captain Morrison was demoted. That is supervisory failure. But financial settlements and employment terminations do not undo the trauma of being arrested on a public street. They do not restore the dignity of being handcuffed in front of colleagues and strangers. They do not erase the message that even a law degree, even professional credentials, even witness verification is insufficient protection from an officer who has decided you are criminal based on your skin color. The real question is, what changes now? Does Chicago finally implement automatic removal from patrol after 3 sustained bias complaints, instead of allowing patterns to reach 11 complaints? Does the department finally take supervisor concerns seriously instead of accepting documentation without action? Do we finally acknowledge that bias training without meaningful accountability is merely paperwork that changes nothing? Because if we do not fix the system that kept Officer Mitchell on patrol for 7 years despite documented bias, if we do not address the culture that taught him black professionals must be suspicious, then we are simply waiting for the next officer, the next victim, the next sidewalk arrest, the next viral video proving that racism remains embedded in policing. Comment if you believe this should be law. Officers with 3 sustained complaints for racial profiling or bias must be permanently removed from patrol duties and undergo comprehensive review before any consideration of reinstatement. And if you think these stories need to be told, if you believe accountability starts with exposure and change requires public pressure, then hit that subscribe button. We are not stopping. We are going to keep exposing these patterns. We are going to keep demanding better. We are going to keep fighting for the attorneys, the professionals, the ordinary people who deserve to walk to work without being criminalized for being black in America. This is not just about one officer or one attorney or one city. This is about all of us, and the system we choose to accept or the system we demand must change.